So we've talked about keeping to your agreements and how important it is for your integrity and your self-esteem. It's worth more than $1 million. It's priceless, really. And honesty and integrity is the only thing you can give away yourself. So here's some tips for making and keeping agreements. Make agreements you can only intend to keep. Really take a few seconds before making the agreement to see if it is really what you want to do. That's really what it comes down to. Check in with yourself, how your body feels about the whole process. Don't make an agreement just because you're looking for someone else's approval. If you do, you'll find yourself breaking these commitments and ultimately losing their approval. Remember to write down all the agreements you make. Use a calendar, a daily planning book, a notebook, a smartphone, a tablet or a computer to record all of your agreements. Over the course of a week, you might enter a dozen of agreements. One of the big reasons we don't keep our agreements is that with the daily press of all our activities, we forget many of these agreements we have made. We write them down, then we review the list every single day. As I've stated before, a new finding from brain research is that when we don't write something down or make an effort to store it in the long-term memory, the memory can be lost in as little as 37 seconds. You may have great intentions, but if you forget to do what you agreed to do, the result is the same as you choosing not to keep the agreement in the first place. Communicate any broken agreement at the first appropriate time. As soon as you know you're going to have a broken agreement, your car won't start, you were caught in traffic, your child was sick, your babysitter can't make it, your computer crashes, notify the other person as soon as possible. Even if I'm going to be 30 seconds late to an appointment, I will phone up the person and say, I'm just round the corner. You'd be amazed at how many people get bent out of shape because you're not there exactly on time or just before it. So it's important that you take the time to make sure you notify people as soon as you realise you're not going to be able to keep to that agreement, that there's an alternative course here. This demonstrates respect for others and for their time and their needs. I think more time is one of the most important things. When someone doesn't keep an appointment with you or you're late, it's effectively they're stealing time away from you. And I'll tell you, time is something you can never get back again. You can replace money, you can replace a lot of other things, but you cannot replace time. It gives them the time to reschedule as well, replan, make the other arrangements, and limit any potential damage. If the first appropriate time is after the fact, still let them know that you've broken the agreement, clean up any consequences, and decide whether to recommit to the agreement again. Finally, in this one, learn to say no more often. Give yourself time to think over before making any new agreements. I used to write the word no on a yellow highlighter on all my calendar pages, and to remind myself to really consider what else I would have to give up in my attention. But if I said yes to something else instead, it made me pause and think before I added another commitment to what I was doing. You'd be amazed at how it could just all add up when you keep saying yes and yes and yes and yes. And if you don't keep track of it, the next minute you've got absolutely no time for anything else except volunteering for everything. So sometimes you'll have to say no. There's a fantastic book called The Curse of the Strong Depression. And it's all about the ability with the strong people, they tend to say yes all the time. And that's why they end up being depressed because they can never say no. And the whole process on how to teach you how to say no in a polite way and actually feel good about yourself. One of the most important trainings Jack Canfield ever took was Money and You, created by Marshall Turber. And it's now run by DC Carvona and the Excellent Business Schools. It rapidly changed how he related money and business and relationships. Everything you want to accomplish requires relationships, remember, with your friends, your family, your staff, your vendors, your coaches, your bosses, your board of directors, clients, customers, partners, associates, students, teachers, audience, fans, and others. For those relationships to work, you need to set up what John Asfarak calls the rules of engagement. How are we going to play? That's really what the rules engagements are. What are the ground rules and the guidelines for the relationship going to be, and which I will endeavour to live by for the rest of my life? If you and all other people you interact with were to agree to the following rules, your level of success would soar. So what can these rules be? So let's take 7 top tips and 7 rules. Be willing to support the purpose, values, roles, and goals. Speak with a good purpose. If it doesn't serve, don't say it. No making people wrong, justifying, or defending. If you disagree, do not understand. Just ask clarifying questions. Don't make the other person wrong in the process. Only make agreements you're willing to intend to keep. If you can't keep an agreement, communicate as soon as practically possible to the appropriate person. Clear up any broken agreement at the first opportunity. When something is not working, first look to the system for the reactions and the corrections, and then propose a system based on the solution to the person who can actually do something about it. Finally, be responsible. No blaming, no defending, no justifying, no shaming. It's amazing how much I say to people and they immediately come back and try to defend their position. That's not why I'm saying it. Sometimes it's a lack of poor self-esteem. It causes that. But that's another story in another chapter. One of the implied agreements in our culture is to be on time. It's an expression of respect. Most people have lost credibility, trust, sales, business jobs, money, and even relationships for being late. Anthony Bourdain, famed chef host of CNN's Anthony Bourdain Parts Unknown and author of Kitchen Confidential, had a mentor who was a no-nonsense bully and a sadist and masochist named Bigfoot, who had a rule in his kitchen: arrive 15 minutes early for your shift. The first time Anthony was only 15 minutes early, he was advised that the next time it happened, he'd be sent home and lose a shift. And the next time after that, he'd be fired. Anthony never was late again for the job, and he instantly implied the same policy with his own legendary kitchens. Remember, if you're not early, you're late. So make sure you plan an adequate amount of time to get ready and leave and travel to whatever appointments, commitments, meetings, and jobs you have. Be on time is one of the most important habits you can develop for success. It's amazing the amount of people, as I said before, when somebody is not on time, they're effectively stealing time from you, and it's something you will never get back again. That's how important it is, right there, if not up with oxygen. It's vital. You never get it again. Could you imagine all the time it's been stolen from you if you were to get that at the end of your life as extra time? How much would that amount to? That's how valuable your time is. So upping the ante. If you really want to up the ante in terms of keeping your commitments to yourself, you can use this technique that Martin Rood taught Jack Canfield. Set up consequences, such as writing a large check to a person or an organisation that you don't like, or shaving off all your hair that, well, it's maybe a bit severe. It'll be okay for me, though. I don't have any. They are greater than the payoffs for getting you not keeping your word, such as the comfort and safety of not taking the risk. The cost of having to deliver on the consequences would be too expensive not to follow through the commitment. Understand? So in other words, if you don't stick to the commitment, you shave off all your hair. If you don't stick to the commitment, you give money to something that you do not like to support their cause. Martin used this technique to motivate himself to follow on through his commitment, to learn how to dive off a diving board. To make sure that he wouldn't back out his commitment, he declared to his friends that if he didn't learn to dive by a certain date, he would write a check for $1,000 to the Ku Klux Klan, because Martin is Jewish, and that would have been more painful than confronting his fear of diving. So as challenging as it was for him, Martin learned how to dive. So what's so important in your life that you don't want to give yourself an out? Make a public declaration of the consequences that you would find painful to pay, and you'll use the power to motivate yourself to take action that you saw that you wanted to take, but on which you've been so much spending procrastination. In other words, just go out and do it and make it happen. As Barbara Corcoran once said, jump out the window and learn to fly on the way down. And I'll see you tomorrow.